Hubert.
Filip.
Wymień czarodzieja jakiegoś.
Harry Potter, Gandalf, Merlin, Dumbledore, Doctor Strange oraz Michael Vincent.
Mili Państwo, ten odcinek podcastu, odcinek numer 129, poświęcony jest tematowi, który nie do końca jest klasyczny dla tego, co my tu uprawiamy z Hubertem. Ale
jest klasyczny w swojej istocie.
Tak, jest klasyczny w swojej istocie. Nadarzyła się okazja zapewniona nam przez instytucję Estrada Poznańska, żeby porozmawiać z ciekawym człowiekiem.
Otóż w Poznaniu we wrześniu, Poznań, fantastyczne miasto.
Pozdrawiamy.
Tak. Odbywał się Drugi Międzynarodowy Festiwal Iluzji 52. Myślę, że 52 to jeśli chodzi o karty w talii. Tak? To jest taki mój domysł to jest. Ludzie, którzy parają się piękną, klasyczną i trzeba przyznać, że chyba dość trudną sztuką
iluzji.
Prestidigitatorstwa. Tak, spotykają się w Poznaniu już po raz drugi, żeby uczyć się od siebie wzajemnie, żeby prezentować swoje możliwości i żeby zachwycać publiczność zebraną tym, co od lat już fascynuje ludzkość. Czyli
jak on to zrobił?
Jak on to zrobił do jasnej
Jezus
cholery,
Maria, to jest niemożliwe.
Nie wierzę, że to jest prawda.
Dokładnie. Nagrywamy ten wstęp po polsku, bo myślimy po polsku, cytując bardzo dobry komiks 48 stron, ale to, co usłyszycie za chwilę, będzie w języku Szekspira. Jak to było w przypadku wywiadu z panem Timem Allenem, animatorem. Wywiad z bardzo ciekawym człowiekiem, jakim jest Michael Vincent, magik pochodzenia brytyjskiego, który sprawia, że karty, te zwykłe karty, które wy bierzecie do ręki i widzicie, Askier, to one robią takie rzeczy, że o Jezus.
Chciałem tylko dodać, że
on mówi po angielsku i my też.
Tak, chciałem tylko dodać, że ten wywiad był równie zaskakujący dla nas, bo spodziewaliśmy się, że zadamy szereg pytań dotyczących tego, a jak to się robi, że karta znika,
tak.
A to prawda, że David Copperfield lata i tego typu podstawowe pytania. Tymczasem okazuje się, że pan Michael Vincent
on zmienił nas w lepszych ludzi.
On zmienił nas w lepszych ludzi, bo poczułem bardzo intensywnie, że sztuka iluzji jest dla niego nawet nie tyle sposobem na życie, ale całkowicie...
Jest jego życiem, to jest jego rdzenie jego jestestwa.
To jest absolutnie 100% filozofia, która przenika każdy aspekt jego życia.
Tak, bo na pytanie, czy bycie magikiem poprawia jego codzienność i przydaje się, to odpowiadał przez 20 minut prawdopodobnie, sprawiając, że zaczęliśmy się zastanawiać, a jak my byśmy zrobili? A może powinniśmy tak samo postępować jak on?
Dlatego posłuchajcie razem z nami, jak pan Michael Vincent opowiada o naprawdę ciekawych rzeczach w sposób szalenie interesujący, a my od czasu do czasu staramy się zadać mu pytanie.
Nie bójcie się. Oprócz tego, że ta ponadgodzinna rozmowa dotyczy tematów dużo poważniejszych niż zwykliśmy się nimi zajmować w podcaście Hammerzeit, to na końcu i tak zjeżdżamy w temat superbohaterstwa, który i tak przez Michaela Vincenta został wyciągnięty na lewą stronę i sprawił, że stał się dużo głębszy niż byśmy się spodziewali.
Tak, i być może od tego momentu my również będziemy zupełnie inaczej patrzeć na książki z obrazkami.
Życzymy zatem miłego odsłuchu tej rozmowy w języku angielskim. Wierzymy, że dacie radę. Pozdrawiamy Michaela Vincenta, pozdrawiamy Was, drodzy słuchacze, i bawcie się dobrze. We're here with Michael Vincent. Great to have you here, Michael.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled.
We're a mainly pop cultural podcast, but as we know, magic is a part of pop culture in many ways, not only movies and TV shows, which we'll be talking about later, I hope, but simply magic as a thing, right? And we know you've been practicing magic for a very long time.
Yes, I'm just over 44 years in the subject as a hobby, and also I think close to 25 years as a professional performer.
So how early did you start with magic?
I saw my first magician when I was 6 years old. This was in 1970, and this magician was a gentleman named David Nixon on television. He was a few generations before Paul Daniels. So I came into magic at the tail end of a golden period where people like David Nixon, Tommy Cooper, they were still alive. These were magicians who came from the old British music hall variety shows and then went into television, and they became the TV personalities throughout the 50s, 60s, and the mid-1970s. So I got to see them on television, which was really nice, yes.
So was that the spark that ignited your passion?
Absolutely.
You saw them and you thought, I want to do this. That's
Absolutely.
cool.
Did you know right away?
Yes, absolutely. And just consider, by the time I hit 14, this was 1978, I saw Fred Capps, Ricky Jay, Ricciardi, Doug Henning, and the great Slidini on television. So I was exposed to great masters who were still alive. Ricky Jay was in his early 30s, give or take. Doug Henning was the generation before David Copperfield, and I thought Doug Henning was fantastic, seriously. And I just knew, because I saw beautiful magic. And as a young boy, to have that experience of astonishment for me was just a beautiful thing. And I just went to the library, and I wanted to read about magic and magicians. And my library had lots of magic books. So I started teaching myself before I went to the magic shops in London.
Are books the only thing that's necessary to start, really, to get the basics?
This may surprise you, actually. My generation, coming into the 1970s, all we had was books, magic shops, and if you were lucky, you could have a master magician teach you because they were alive, all right? The young kids today, where do they go first and foremost to find information about magic?
I would guess YouTube.
They'd go to the internet.
Yeah.
YouTube, Vimeo, and all the secrets are online now. If you watch a TV magic show now, you can Google it and probably find some sort of answer. Most of the young people today are not reading. I come from a generation of readers. Whatever knowledge I have came from a book, or I got it firsthand from a great master, because I'm a first-generation student of Slidini. I studied with Slidini in New York in 1982. So I have the visceral experience of being intimidated by a master and then feeling relaxed in his company and then responding to his teachings in a way that made him happy. He didn't live long enough to see the magician I have become, but everything that I do is funneled through the filter that Slidini gave me in terms of how to think about magic, how to practice it, and most importantly, how to present it to an audience.
So is that one of the reasons why you're teaching your own students now, to continue the tradition?
You know what, I think your question is spot on. It's a natural thing for me to lecture, do my seminars, have my private students, run my academy in London, and magicians that come to me looking for personal tuition, they don't just get the secrets. My training is a full-bodied personal development program. If I was to teach you a magic trick and you could do it competently well, would you have the psychology and the confidence to stand up and present it in front of 100 people?
I think I could, but I don't know if the pressure wouldn't become too much at the spot.
Right.
I think I can do it. I'm going out and then, stage fright or whatever.
You freeze.
Well, this is how I coach my student. The fact that you just said you think you could, guess what? You're halfway there. Learning a trick is not an easy process.
Yeah.
But we can make the process easy and enjoyable. I would not put a student of mine on stage unless I felt technically they could handle it. The psychological transformation in walking on stage and presenting yourself, that's a different conversation, because the number one fear for a lot of people is standing up and public speaking.
Yeah, that's the thing that differentiates Western upbringing, I think. Great Britain and USA, that you teach kids to stand up and talk in public very early.
Absolutely.
And in Poland, it's not that common.
Now, multiply that 10 times, maybe more, while doing a magic trick.
Yeah, because you have to perform. That's the thing, right?
And do it well.
Yeah.
And then be comfortable with people looking at you.
So how long did it take you to become confident enough to go on a stage? And
almost immediately. True story. When I was at school, it was not a happy period because I was getting into a lot of fights. I was being bullied. And my school teacher, I told him, I'm not coming to school anymore. I don't like it here. I hate it. So what's the matter? I said, I did not come to school to be victimized and subjugated by people that don't like me for whatever reasons. I come to school to learn something and make something of myself, not to be a victim. I'm not coming. I was very angry. I became quite hostile, actually. I said, Michael, calm down, calm down. If these guys are bullying you, it's not your fault. It's their problem. He said, I know you like to do magic. If you trust me, I will organize it for you to do some magic for the school assembly in the morning, and I promise you they will leave you alone. I said, why would they leave me alone just because I can do magic? He said, because you can do something they can't, and they will not be able to explain it. You will have power. I was only 14 years old. He was right. I was shaking like a leaf. So in spite of this, I went on and I did 2 magic tricks, and I got the applause. In this moment, as a young boy, for the first time in my life, I got approval and acceptance from people, and this became like a drug to me. And psychologically, it did something to my brain. I thought, wow, if I could be a good magician, I could survive. This is a psychological neurosis here, not the subject. Because in that moment, I made a calculation and a choice to master magic, not because I loved the subject, but because I could do something that people couldn't explain. But it was a tool for survival initially. And then I met Slidini.
So it was like a kind of a coincidence, or did you seek him out?
It was the perfect alignment of the stars. I walked into a magic shop when I was 15, 16, and the owner could see that I was quite serious about magic. And I was reading good books. I was reading Harry Lorraine's magic book from the library, and that was the conversation that inspired him to take an interest in me. And then one day, I said, Alan, his name was Alan, I said, there's a magic show on Christmas Day. It's called Dick Cavett, and Slidini's going to be on television. He said, watch it. And after Christmas, come back and tell me what you thought. So I went back into the magic shop after Christmas. I said, Alan, Slidini's fantastic. I've never seen magic like this before. I said, where can I learn that? Oh, you can read his book. What, he's got a magic book? He goes, yes, The Magic of Slidini. I said, who wrote it? He said, Lewis Ganson. I said, do you have this book? He said, yes. How much is it? He said, it's £30. So I need to save up my pocket money so I can buy this book. So after a little while, I bought the book and I started reading Slidini's magic. And a few years later, I was in New York with Alan, and he introduces me to Slidini. Can you imagine that? I don't have any brothers or sisters. I grew up, my mother raised me. These things don't happen in our family, but this did.
Have you thought about putting that story into a screenplay? Because this is amazing stuff.
I've got news for you. I don't make movies. I'm a performer. I'm just giving you the backstory to my life.
So you would be okay if we made a story.
Listen, the fact that you mentioned it, I've got juice for you, because I also met Cy Enfield. He was my hero. Do you remember a film called Zulu with Michael Caine? Zulu was made in the 1960s. The director was Cy Enfield. Now get this, Cy Enfield was a brilliant sleight of hand magician. Not a lot of people know that.
We certainly didn't, yeah.
Now Cy Enfield was my mentor. He used to live in London, in Putney. I used to meet him in the coffee shop with Alan every Saturday, and we would discuss sleight of hand. I read his book. So I've met all my heroes. I even met Muhammad Ali.
Well, that's impressive.
And I taught Ali magic.
What tricks did you...
I taught him the acrobatic matchbox. But I said, Muhammad, you can't expose the secrets. He says, I can't lie to people, he said, because it's against my religion. I said, you make me laugh. Because he was so funny. He was cute, actually. So I mention all of this because if this was to be a screenplay, what would be the hook that would make people care?
An underdog becomes the master.
An underdog?
Yeah. A kid from a not so wealthy family. You say you're an only child. Your mother raised you. So that's the thing I think that people like. But it would have to be like something more. I mean, in the process.
Well, I can tell you what that something more is. I come from the black community. I'm going to speak straight. I told you I tell the truth. And I'm going to tell the truth now. I'm in a very unusual profession for a black man, okay? It would normally be sports, not necessarily academics. Was I academically minded? Yes, I was. Did I do well at school? No, I didn't, because my brain was engaged in another conversation. I wanted to be a magician. I found school boring because my learning style, they didn't know this back then. If you put me in a classroom and lecture to me, guess what will happen? I'll fall asleep. Because I don't process information like that. Give me something to read. Give me something to do. Let me work it. I'm a kinesthetic learner. So my teacher, Slidini, he could see that I had read his book. So all he had to do was fine-tune the details in my understanding. And I practiced like there was no tomorrow. The fact I've got this mindset inside a brown-skinned body, where do you go with that? All it does is show that knowledge, inspiration, will, desire, commitment, and dedication is not the exclusive domain of people outside of the black community. It's available to everybody. And all it takes is the right environment for it to nurture and grow. I was in the right environment. I come from a generation where magic shops was a place I could go to every Saturday and spend my pocket money. I could engage the owners in the magic shops and have a conversation. I could say, I've got some money to spend. What do you recommend? He says, well, do you like stage or close-up? I like close-up, specifically card magic. He said, have you read Vernon? No. Well, that's a consideration. Have you read Marlowe? Who's Marlowe? Probably the greatest sleight-of-hand magician with cards that has ever lived. When you think of science, we think of Einstein. In card magic, when we think of the science, the nuts and bolts of technique, Marlowe is king. Why? Because he thought about card magic in a very scientific way. And I'm talking pivot points, pressure. He found a way to make all of the old techniques even better. And he published his magnum opus called Revolutionary Card Technique. Let me give you an example.
Please.
Okay. This is pure Marlowe, okay? 6 of clubs, okay? 6 of hearts. Exacting technique and precise technique to create a pure effect.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you watch it up close,
yes,
it becomes even more unusual or improbable or whatever. If you watch it on a stage 10 feet away, 12 feet away, whatever, or on a screen, it shows someone who's extremely skilled at what they do, but it lacks the human touch, so to speak. And right now, when you did that simple demonstration, it goes like, what just happened?
Yeah, I just watch this kind of tricks online or on TV, but now that I see it up close, I'm totally amazed. That's
I can see in your eyes how visceral the experience of magic is. And let me give credit to Ed Marlowe, because for me, he was my hero. If I ever need to solve a problem when I'm working on something, I go to Marlowe's work, because I'm sure he probably thought of it. Because when he created a trick, he gave you several versions, because he always tried to exhaust all possibilities. Revolutionary Card Technique, and all the small booklets he published from 1938 right up until the 90s when he died. Would you believe I went to Chicago just to meet him? And when I got there, they told me he was in hospital. I had a miserable week in Chicago in 1989 because I wanted to meet Marlowe and he was in hospital. I missed my chance.
So it sounds like he was Batman, because Batman has a plan for everything.
Yeah.
He sees every possibility. So Marlowe was that guy.
He was the guy.
He was the Batman.
He was the Batman of card magic.
Yeah, when Marlowe was in the Batcave, he was forensic. He was very forensic when it came to, he was like CSI. He wanted to work, but he reverse engineered everything and made it better. Beautiful thing. And I was attracted to this. So my academic skills, whatever they may be, is recognizing good literature and make it work. And if it can't work, I'll find a way to make it work. So this is what we call sensory acuity. I was practicing this before the word even was invented. Sensory acuity comes from neuro-linguistic programming. And basically what it means is you have the sensitivity to recognize what is not working. Okay, so if I do this, it gives me this result. But that's not the result I want. Well, maybe if I just do 1 millimeter off center, maybe that's interesting. Let's see if I can improve this. Boom. Okay, but what didn't work there could be useful. Let me file that away. So nothing ever gets wasted. It's just feedback. It's like Thomas Edison and the light bulb. He discovered 1,000 ways in which the bulb would not work.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean he failed. It just gave him information, which is why Tesla wanted to work with him. You and Tesla?
Yes.
Yeah,
oh my God. Was he Polish? No, Czechoslovakian.
Yeah, but he's from this
area. Do you realize the technology we enjoy today, Tesla thought of it?
And he's also one of the main characters in the movie about magic. I don't know if you've seen it, The Prestige.
The Prestige.
Yeah, The Prestige, yeah. He's played by David Bowie.
I didn't even know that was David Bowie. He played it so well. Seriously. It was incredible. That was the best performance in the film. He so dignified the way he played it. Yeah.
You have this persona of a sophisticated gentleman, a very elegant one. Yeah, you present that on stage, but was it a conscious choice, or is it you? Do you do that every day naturally?
Just hearing you say that, I have to let you know that if my mother was here, she would take full credit for what you just said. Because she made my suits when I was a little boy. So when we went to church on Sunday, okay, put your shirt and tie on, make sure everything's tucked in, polish your shoes the night before, and we went to church. So I was like a little dandy. All right, so that comes from my upbringing, but it got consolidated and enhanced when I saw people like Cardini, Channing Pollock, the Nicholas brothers. The Nicholas brothers were tap dancers from the 1930s and 40s, but they cut a beautiful portrait, well-dressed, stood straight, and when they were on stage dancing, you could freeze frame their performance and it would be a perfect photograph. So this image and persona you speak about, it was already there at the beginning, but I didn't know it. So my style 10, 20 years ago isn't the style you saw today or last night if you saw the show. It was there that came out because I realized the magic I was doing and the way that I was doing it wasn't natural or authentic. I've now hit an authentic style and presentation that just feels right. Why? Because it's who I am.
And it's very interesting for me what you just said about the authenticity of it. Because one thing that tends to like take me out of an illusion, if I see a character on a stage and it covers the magic for me, I tend to concentrate on the character itself. Like if it's a funny guy, I tend to concentrate on the funny thing that he does, not the magic that he presents. And with you, it all flows naturally and you just focus on the magic.
And here's the best part. This is something I try to teach my students. I start the conversation with them very early about who are they going to be when they perform magic. Are they going to be funny? Are they going to be serious? Are they going to be mysterious? Are they going to be cocky? Are they going to be a card shark and do demonstrations? Or is the magic going to happen out of a natural story and narrative? Because once a student discovers their natural, authentic voice, the tricks that they perform becomes easy. They will not choose a trick because they saw another magician do it. They'll choose magic or they will research magic that allows them the opportunity to express something natural and authentic about themselves to the audience. So the trick becomes a vehicle for their self-expression, natural self-expression.
Were you able to steer them in the right direction, any of your students? They think they want to be funny, but you know that's not the way for them. They should be, mysterious.
Well, that's a wonderful question. And you know what? I'm going to be honest and say it's very difficult because I meet a lot of students now who are inspired by, let's say, Derren Brown, or they want to be like David Williamson, or they want to be funny like Bill Malone. And I can tell that's not who they are. But guess what I do? I let them do it so they can discover that's not them. Because sometimes the best coaching is to coach by doing and saying nothing. The student must learn to be independent. But I do coach my students to recognize what's not working, because I can't tell them everything.
Yeah.
Life has to tell them. But I hope to cultivate within them the mindset of sensory acuity. That's the most important thing. Practice it and tell me if it works. Come back and tell me your feedback. Why am I doing this? Alan did it with me and it worked. I used to say to Alan, what can you tell me about Slidini? He didn't know much about Slidini's life, so I had to go find out for myself. Did you know, last week, I was in the town of Tagliacozzo, an Italian village, and it was a few hundred kilometers from Slidini's birthplace, Foggia, on the east coast of Italy. It's just south of Pescara. So I felt really close. Slidini left Foggia as a young boy, and he traveled to Argentina, where he lived for a few years. And then he went to Boston, and then he settled in New York. Earlier this year, I was in Argentina doing my seminars for the Argentinian magicians, and something hit me. I said to some of them, why is the Spanish influence so powerful in Argentina? They all said it's because of Juan Tamariz, because the Spanish way is such a big deal in Madrid. They've got a big school, Escorial, the big Spanish school of magic. I said, guys, I think you're missing something. He said, what's that, Mike? I said, who is the number one magician responsible for the great magic I have seen in Argentina? I have not seen one terrible magician. All of you have impressed me with your performances. And they all thought for a moment. I said, well, if we had to pick one magician that's inspired the generations in Argentina, it would be Fu Manchu. Fu Manchu was David Bamberg. David Bamberg was the son of Okito Okito was born in Holland, but he put on a mysterious oriental character. Fu Manchu put on one of the greatest theatrical shows ever. You could say, just to give you a comparison, he was the David Copperfield of his day in terms of visual spectacle. Di Vernon saw Fu Manchu, and he thought it was one of the greatest stage shows he had ever seen. Fu Manchu settled into Argentina. David Bamberg and Di Vernon were very close friends. David Bamberg learned beautiful sleight of hand, which he taught to the Argentinian magicians. And who saw David Bamberg? René Lavande. René Lavande lost his right hand as a boy and became the legend, the one-hand maestro with cards. All of this came to me, and I realized something. My magic is part of the Latin influence. I was taught by Slidini. Slidini lived in South America.
So it's like a genealogical tree, right?
Yes.
It's like points connected throughout history.
So my DNA as a magician is in the Latin, because, all right, I may be Caribbean, because my family is from St. Lucia. Slidini, his influence, René Lavande, Fu Manchu. Fu Manchu performed in Europe. And who saw Fu Manchu in Europe and Spain? Juan Tamariz. Can you see the connection? So I know where I stand in terms of my DNA and inspiration for magic. It's Latin, but it's also European because of people like Okito, Fred Capps, Tommy Wonder. Not many British magicians, I'm afraid, because they existed long before my birth. Fu Manchu existed long before my birth, but I came in because I met Slidini. So I met someone who was connected to Fu Manchu. Does that make sense?
So does that mean that your type of magic speaks more to people in certain geographic areas, or is it a universal language?
Well now, just consider this. I get an email out of the blue from a contact in Argentina. Mike, we would love you to come to our country and perform your magic. We love you over here. We love your magic. We saw you on Penn and Teller, and we feel our community would love you. I said, guys, let's make this happen. And it did. While I was there, they organized a trip to Uruguay. I got on the ferry to Montevideo, and I did my performance in Montevideo. And now they want me to come back to go to Chile.
So you travel a lot with your magic.
Well, South America was beautiful because it was my first time. But Europe predominantly, and the Far East.
And do you see differences where the way people react in different places?
Like the audiences have to be different.
Do you have to adjust your shows for different audiences?
I don't adjust anything. I open the door wider to welcome them in.
Okay.
I have to work with an interpreter, but me, they get what they paid for. When it comes to the South Americans, for example, there is a spiritual affinity. I felt it when I was there. I felt at home. But it's more in the way they treat me as a human being. They treat me with dignity and respect. I feel it here.
We're glad. We're very happy.
I feel it here. I felt it in Italy. These are places I have been to where the vibe and energy is different to any other place I've been to. I noticed it in the inclusiveness of the Italian way of life, the Argentinian way of life, the people here. Nobody gets left out. I was just saying to my friend Kulik, we must support Michael to perform more. He's got beautiful magic. He's just shy. And he must overcome that shyness because he looks good, he stands well, and he performs beautiful magic, but he doesn't perform. I said the performance is the last piece of the puzzle. And once that piece is in the place, it opens the door to another conversation. Right, how more expressive can I be for the audience?
I think the answer to the next question is a very resounding yes, but do your skills and experience and expertise of being a magician comes in handy in everyday life?
Absolutely.
Like, in a store or in a conversation or whatever.
Let me give you a typical example. My teacher, Alan, said that magic is a means of communication. It's all communication. Life is communication. The quality of your life is the quality of your communication with yourself and with others. So the primary person is over here with you. How do you communicate to yourself? What do you tell yourself on a daily basis? Do you support yourself? Do you encourage yourself? Or do you put yourself down? Because guess what? If you put yourself down, that's how the world is going to treat you. But if you speak well of yourself, oh wow, you look good today. Okay, let's go face the world. I grew up as a very shy boy. I was being bullied every day. I thought the whole world was against me. So when I started learning magic, I had a secret weapon and I cultivated some superpowers. I could get inside people's minds before they even thought of hurting me. Not a good way to be a magician. And it's a horrible context to come from. But I got that healed so that I could let it go forever. So now I can embrace people with an open hand and a smile on my face. So when I meet the waitresses in the coffee shops in town, I say, good morning, how are you today? Wow, and I see the smile on their face. Do you want to know why? Because people ignore them. They just serve the coffee, but there's no... how are you today? Have you had breakfast? And it takes them by surprise. Oh, no, not yet. What are you going to have? Oh, I don't know yet. Well, I'm going to have this. This is really nice. Oh, you made a very good choice. It's all about the interaction with people. Because what is the world saying out there? Please notice me. Everyone is dying to be noticed and to be acknowledged in some manner or fashion. What is it going to take? Five seconds of interaction. Hello, good morning. How are you today? Those are the most magical words you can say to a stranger.
That's a very British way of thinking.
No, it's the...
I know it should be universal because it's great. But when you come here and you do that, hi, how are you? That's the phrase that in Polish language isn't so often used. Just like when you meet a stranger, like you said, in a coffee shop or in a store or wherever. That's the thing that differentiates you from us in a way that we would like to be more like you. Just like you said, because when you acknowledge someone and you make him feel better, he feels better. Maybe he'll make somebody else feel better. And it goes on and on and on. And the world is a better place. It's simple, but very difficult.
You can tell me something. If it's not the Polish way, what is the Polish way? Is it just to be quiet and mind your own business?
Pretty much,
yeah.
We are really reserved, yeah.
Reserved?
Reserved, yeah, in a way we in contact with other person.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. If that's the way of being here,
yeah.
How do you initiate contact with a stranger that could possibly become a friend?
Right now, it's mostly online, probably, just like many other countries. But I think the thing you said, to initiate a contact with a stranger, is extremely difficult.
I think you would need to have a context. You need to.
You go to a party. You know one person. You go with them. All the others are strangers, but you know someone, and that someone introduces you to someone else. And that's the thing. You need a context, a social context, not just walking on the street and saying hello to someone, because they will think there's something wrong with you. Why are you talking to me? I don't know you. That's the thing here. And the thing that when you smile to a stranger here, it looks suspicious. When you smile to a stranger in London, it's not like, he's got an agenda, he wants something from me. No, it's just a smile. And when something like that happens here, when a stranger smiles to you, because he's experiencing a very great day, or maybe he met a magician and he taught him to be a better person, whatever. That's the thing that makes your day better. A simple smile.
I've really heard something powerful in what you said. Context is decisive. And without that context, you'd be over here. And whatever's going on there, you won't even really go near it. So I'm here to give you a different point of view in this conversation, because we don't know who's going to listen to this.
Yeah.
So whoever listens to this, they're going to get the Michael Vincent point of view of life. My context, my overriding context is we've got this big ball of rock called planet Earth that we all live on and share. 8 billion people. Think about that for a minute. And so much has happened on this ball of rock that has impacted the quality of life for people. Let me share something with you, just to slightly go off topic. It's not lost on me what has happened in your country in the last 100 years with the Second World War, the first country invaded by the Germans. I get that. And it's had a massive impact on how the Polish people see themselves in relation to that event. But you've moved on from it. I'm here to say this is a beautiful country. You've got a beautiful culture. You've got a very gentle spirit, a very non-threatening, non-aggressive way of life and being. Now, to me, it means you're very approachable. I can say hello, and if you choose not to respond, that's okay. But it's not going to stop me from being who I am. So I have a challenge for you. The next time you go to a coffee shop, just say those magic words. Good morning, good afternoon, how are you today? I'd like a cappuccino. Just try it and see what happens. You just don't know. And you will see the magic that I see every day. So the tricks that I do, the performance, guess what? It's just a natural part of my expression. But what makes this work is what I practice every day. the communication skills, the rapport skills with strangers. Because think about this for a minute. When I sit down at the close-up table and I invite two strangers to sit down next to me, I've never met these people before in my life, yet in under 30 seconds, I've established a rapport with them faster than two people meeting for the first time out there in the world. I've got two people sat next to me, strangers, who feel comfortable with me and they're willing to share and play games with me.
That's actually one of the things that fascinated me when I watched your videos online, because the way that you can get in contact with the people you sit at the table with and how easily they follow your instructions and how you manage to work with them. Is that a skill you have to work on for a long time? Or?
Keep in mind, I was very shy. So alongside my magic, I became interested in personal development, communication, understanding the psychology of human behavior, rapport skills. I needed to understand how to improve my own communication with me. I needed to understand, what does the world see when they look at me? Well, the first thing they see is that my skin is brown. So I needed to understand my own history. And what did I see? My mother is from St. Lucia, but our family came from Africa, Sierra Leone. On my father's side, they were mixed, St. Lucian and French. So I've got French blood. So I am Caribbean, English, French, European. I'm a real composite. Wow. I thought, so I've got all that inside of me. That's my DNA. And because of that, my personality has made friends with virtually every race on the planet. I've made friends everywhere. Because when I was a boy at school, I thought it'd be cool to have at least one friend in every country in the world. And it's happened. And the internet has made it possible for me to reach more people in one video on YouTube than anything possible. This is extraordinary. We've got this beautiful technology that we can reach. And this conversation, I don't know who's going to hear it. So I'm being responsible now in my message that whoever hears it, they will feel some level of connection with the three of us.
Yeah.
Do you get that? It's a beautiful thing. And my duty now is to leave the craft of magic better than I found it, if only by 1%. Because in that 1%, there's a lot of power.
And you said before about practicing, and to get back to a very basic thing. Is practicing important? Do you have to perform certain tasks every day to keep yourself in the game?
Yeah, because we talked a lot about the psychological part of magic, but it's also
skill.
very important to have the physical skill to do those tricks, to do the manipulations with your hands.
It's a motor skill, yes. And I'm 55 years old right now, and I'm remembering something Slidini said to me. He said, make sure the magic you can perform in your 50s, you can still perform when you're 60 and 70. What that means to me now, I am eliminating anything and everything that doesn't serve me. And I'm only holding on to the pure, beautiful essence that I consider to be magic. So the things that I practice now, I want to be able to perform in 10 years' time, or still be able to perform competently well. So my whole philosophy is a maintenance of a high level of competency and effectiveness.
Yeah, but does it mean you wake up, you eat your breakfast, and then you spend 30 minutes with your cards just to make them...
Are you like an athlete that has to practice every day to
flex
keep in shape?
that muscle?
It means exactly that and then some. Because I have other things going on in my life right now which are not magic related, so it impacts on my daily schedule. So I'll be honest and say I am not practicing my magic in the way that I once did. What I'm doing is maintaining what I have. Once I've sorted these few things out, it will open up space so that I can start to study again and create new magic. But the maintenance is very important for me because it just keeps everything in good shape. So I can stand on a stage and I can stand up and do my lecture like I did yesterday and still deliver the goods and make my clients happy. And I always have my cards with me. So when I'm taking a break in a coffee shop, I'm doing my daily drills with the cards.
Speaking of cards, I was always wondering, and I never could get the answer to that question, what is it about a deck of cards that makes it so magical that you see a deck of cards and you either
think magic,
and you think
or
magic.
Casino. Two things, magic or casino.
Yeah, and it's a prop that you use consistently, and a lot of magicians use consistently, and it just has this. But I cannot describe it. The feeling of magic in the deck of cards by itself.
I can tell you a true story. I was 10 years old in the cinema in London, 1974, and the film I saw was The Sting.
Oh, amazing!
with Paul Newman, Robert Redford. You know the story.
Oh, of course.
Con men, grifters, card sharks. I was done. Paul Newman's character was a card shark, but so was Robert Shaw. Doyle Lonergan, that's a name, don't you ever forget it. Doyle Lonergan, Johnny Hooker, and we see that beautiful scene where he's shuffling and cutting cards. I was transfixed. And then the poker game, where you see Scarney, you see the hands of John Scarney fold the cards in a handkerchief under the table.
The one on the train.
On the train scene.
Yeah.
I thought, what on earth is going on here? I didn't know, but it looked really interesting. The first books I read on card tricks I got from my library. I've been handling cards ever since. I never found playing cards difficult to handle. It felt natural in my hand. The first thing I learnt with cards as a 14-year-old was this. To shuffle a deck with one hand. There was a magician in a magic shop. I walked in as a young boy and I saw him splitting the deck in half, weaving the corners together. I was transfixed. I said, how do you do that? He said, you got a deck on you? I'll show you. He had never seen me before, but he taught me how to shuffle a deck with one hand. And he told me, Sonny, practice over the bed because you're going to be dropping cards a lot. He was right. His name was Jake, and we became friends ever since. He was a clown, but he did this beautiful shuffle. And that was the first thing I learnt before any other thing with cards. And funny enough, just being able to learn this prepared my mind for everything else. So, to answer your question, Paul Newman inspired me to practice cards because it was the only prop I had money to spend on. The books I got for free in the library. What is it about a deck of cards? It's just pieces of paper. And yet still, there are 1,000 stories to be told.
Exactly.
This is my Stradivarius. It's my instrument of choice. Me and Kulik, we were talking about this morning. He said, Mike, I only want to focus on card magic. And I said, so you should, because this is your violin. Now, go express yourself. Last night, on stage, I did 3 of my favorite card tricks for an audience of 250 people. Now, how can you entertain an audience that big with a deck of cards? Well, the prop might be small, but the effects were huge.
I can attest to that. I was sitting in the very back of the audience yesterday, and I was still amazed.
So, that trick about Alice in Wonderland, if you read the book, you'll see everything I said. The cards come to life in the mirror. That's a stage trick with a deck of cards. To me, I get excited because I can travel light, okay, because they don't allow much weight on the planes now. So
I was actually wondering what you were going to show yesterday, because I knew that you were in no position here to have the close-up magic. And I was wondering if you were going to do some other tricks, or are you going to stick with a deck of cards? And still, it was amazing.
Well, it's not just cards, but cards are my passion within the subject of magic. You saw rope tricks. You saw the trick with my ring, the watch, and the wallet.
Yeah.
That's my opener. So I do other things. I do some mind reading as fun, some straight card magic. I do the classic with silks and rings, generic tricks, just to flesh things out. But I'm a card man, right in my heart.
So how many tricks are at your disposal at any given time? Like
at any given time, right now, if we weren't recording, I could entertain you for an hour with just a deck of cards.
Can we do that afterwards?
Yes, we can. Oh, yes, we can. So what makes it special? I just feel very much attached and in tune with a deck of cards and what can be done with them. It's my security blanket. It's my universal credit card. This is a true story, and it happened this year, January. I had to go to the United States, and my luggage didn't arrive, and I had to improvise. I had nothing on me. So I just bought a few decks of cards and made it work, because I remember a promise to myself I made, that I wanted to be so competent with a deck of cards, I could travel with nothing, buy a couple of decks, and do my show. That's it. That's a beautiful thing, really, because your skill always travels with you.
Okay, so about skill and a very basic prop, which is a deck of cards. How do you put that up next to technology and modern magicians? And
you hear a lot of stories about modern magicians using this cutting edge technology. For example, I know even with playing cards, like playing cards with liquid ink on them to show the card that they want you to see. But you've never been interested in this kind of
Well, I haven't seen a need for it at this stage of my development, because I'm still rooted in a past-based technology. Because when I read the old books, The effects are beautiful. The trick you saw me do last night with the mirror, 1868.
And it still works.
But what you saw was my interpretation of that idea.
So would you say that like illusion and magic is like technology proof? Like we have this whole new technology now. People can pause the video and zoom in and watch it frame by frame. And that sometimes, and most of the times I guess, they still can't see what's really happening.
This is a good point. If I choose to share a video on my YouTube channel, guess what? I watch it frame by frame.
Yeah.
And I think, is it viewer proof? If it isn't, I don't share it.
Okay. So you have to look out for this kind of
Well,
things.
I'm thinking like the average man who lives on the internet now, because I want to engage a positive conversation. If I start seeing comments that are racist, abusive, giving away secrets, I delete them. And I will go so far as to delete the video if I have to, because I don't want to encourage exposure. Because think about this. Everybody online is an instant expert.
Yeah, about everything.
They may have an Encyclopedia Britannica on their shelf, and they'll do the research, okay, and they'll just write, copy and paste what they just read. Doesn't mean they've lived it or experienced it. Yeah. When I did my Penn and Teller performance, some young kid decided to expose it, but I could tell he was clumsy because he didn't know how to handle 2 decks of cards. He had no right doing that, but there was nobody around to tell him there is a better way to conduct yourself. I come from a generation that respected secrets. The only way I could get secrets from a great magician was to show him that I was worthy. How did I show him I was worthy? By showing to him that I read his book. Seinfeld was astonished that I could perform his tricks from his book when I first met him. He said, wow, the kid's good, Alan. And he said, I told you, I was only 16, but I was doing this trick. He would show the 5 of diamonds and just rubbing it on the back, it would change. This is Seinfeld's movement. I met a wonderful magician named Ken Krenzel. He was a psychologist, psychotherapist. I met him in New York. And when I was introduced to him, I said, oh, Ken Krenzel. He said, yeah, what's up, kid? He said, I've read your book. He said, really? Yeah, Card Classics of Ken Krenzel. It's a fantastic book. He said, I've been working on your mechanical reverse. I'm not sure if I'm doing it correctly. Would you mind giving me some feedback? So I did the move for him. I said, come with me, sit down, let's have a conversation. He knew I was serious. Would you believe we became friends and we were corresponding until he died.
So is the magical community still like that today, like based on respect and secrecy? And
it can be if you approach it the right way. So I always tell my students, if you want to meet whoever, learn one of their tricks and you've got a calling card. So if you should meet them at a convention, just go up to them, say, hello, how are you? I'm so-and-so. I've been practicing one of your tricks. Can you help me? Richard Kaufman, great magician. He gave me the secret bullet. When I met him in New York, he told me, don't ask for anything from anyone, but share. If you want to speak to so-and-so, show them one of their tricks and they'll take an interest. They need to see that you are serious because they came from a generation that looked up to Slidini and Vernon, Ed Balducci, and you couldn't just walk into that circle demanding anything. You'd get thrown out the door. Vernon, Slidini, they would sit quietly and watch. Okay, the kid, he's got chops. You would then be welcomed into that group if you could do the work. So there was a hierarchy and you had to earn your stripes. So when magicians come up to me asking me to explain things, guess what I say? I said, I'm not in the business of free consultancy, so don't ask. If you're serious, go online and sign up onto my academy, and then we can discuss coaching and training. But it's going to cost you. But if someone comes up to me and shows me one of my tricks, I'll sit down and talk with them. No expenses.
That's creating context on the spot.
Powerful context. Because I want to create an environment of dedicated students, not lazy magicians. Because I meet a lot of lazy magicians who think it should be handed to them on a plate just for the asking. No. Go and do your homework. Read the books. If you can't read, learn how to read. Go back to school. Find someone who can teach you how to read. Because reading is the source of all learning, not videos. Videos make you lazy. Monkey see, monkey do. But if you can read, you are engaging faculties in your brain laying dormant, and you will see things differently, and you'll start to recreate things beautifully. I'm encouraging a generation of readers.
But when you watch other magicians, not just the top of the top, the best ones, but mediocre, aspiring ones, is it always fun for you, or is it like when doctors watch House MD? They can't watch the medical shows on TV because they know everything in advance. Is it like you watch this guy and you know what he's going to do, so you get kind of bored?
Does it spoil the experience for you?
Well, I heard two conversations. First conversation, when I watch magicians, I'm watching them through the eyes of a coach, because that's what I am.
Okay.
And I'm hoping they will surprise me. If they don't, I'm wearing my coach hat. I'm looking for something that I can praise, because I don't want to shoot anyone down, because to stand up and perform is a big deal. So if they don't do a good job, it doesn't matter at this stage. What does matter is that they do not lose the courage to do it again. So I want to encourage them to get up and do it again and give them something to work on. Now, when it comes to spoiling the experience, get this. This is a true story. I did my show last year and there was a lady in the audience and we got into a conversation right in the middle of a trick. And she said to me, Michael, why do you do this? I said, what? Magic. I said, you're a grown man doing magic tricks. Why? So I told her the story that I've shared with you. Yeah. I saw my magician when I was 6 years old. In that moment, I experienced real astonishment. And I knew there and then I wanted to be a magician. I didn't realize it at the time, but I signed on the dotted line with the goddess of magic. And the deal was, if I learned to study magic, I give up the right to ever experience astonishment again in this way. Because I will learn so much. The experience will never be the same. Wow, I don't have that. And because I don't have it, I now have a responsibility to give it away to my audience. So the only way I can experience it sort of remotely is to see it on the face of my audience.
Okay, that's amazing.
So does it spoil it for me? Yes, it does, because I will never have it.
So when you watch, I'm guessing you did watch performers of a celebrity level, like Chris Angel or David Blaine, or Dynamo, your fellow countryman.
Correct.
How do you respond to that? Because you watch a show with effects and, I guess, live audience on a street, but it's filmed, it's scripted in a way, it's directed by someone, and how does it appeal to you?
I can tell you. Let's take David Blaine as an example. I think he's fantastic. It took me a while to understand what he was doing, but I got it. He went right back to basics, and he did a 360-degree turn and focused the camera on the response of the audience. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the magician. It's about the audience and what they are going through, watching the magic. So he took his ego out of the equation. He said, hey, you want to see something cool? Watch this. And he levitates 10 feet in the air. He pointed the camera at a homeless person drinking coffee. Hey, buddy, what's up? Hey, I want to show you something. And he starts to grab the man's coffee. The guy wanted to fight him for it because that's all he had. He said, no, wait, watch. So he's moving the coffee in his hands and he visibly changes into coins. A cup full of coffee. He said, oh my God, that's real magic. And he starts singing. In this moment, I felt quite emotional when I saw this because it reminded me of something Robert Houdin said. Magic really has no context, but it can do. If a person is hungry and you snap your fingers and there's a sandwich, right there, that's real magic because it's provided a useful service in the world. In that moment, we saw Robert Houdin's beautiful philosophy come to life. He created a powerful context and meaning for why magic can be relevant to make a difference to the quality of life for someone. So, when I watch David Blaine, I'm seeing someone very smart and very clever. I'm sorry I didn't go and see his show in London because I was engaged elsewhere. But my friends told me he was fantastic because the last time we saw him, he was in a glass box. So, what has he done? He has used the medium of television, video, YouTube, call it what you will, and social media to generate a real cult-like following. And the best part of all, he has shown that he is a master showman. He's a real student of magic. He loves magic. And he gave the audience an unforgettable experience, doing things that blew their mind. Dynamo and all the others, they're doing the same thing in their own way. So I take my hat off to them simply because whoever is in front of the camera on television, they have a big responsibility to the public, to themselves, and to the craft to leave it better than they found it. That's how I look at it.
I wanted to ask you about your experience with Penn and Teller
Okay.
and Fulas. Why do you think it is so hard to fool them, actually? Is it because they know every trick in the book and you have to invent... Well, from the way I see it, the only tricks they kind of fool them is new stuff that gets invented by the magician and they can figure it out on the spot. Do you think that's the deal?
Okay, my experience was very positive. I loved it. The reason why it's difficult to fool them is not because they know everything. It's because they're intelligent enough to reverse engineer what must have happened and to be able to communicate it in a very cryptic language.
That's one of the parts that's always the most...
They explain it by using some weird sentence configuration.
They explain it in a way that the audience doesn't know what you're talking about. So, but it's crystal clear to you, isn't it?
My performance, they isolated one key component. But does that explain the whole act? No, it doesn't. Did I fool them? I may have caught them off guard with one or two things, but was it enough to get a trip to Las Vegas? No. And you want to know the truth? I didn't really care.
Yeah, but Penn did say something like, I know what you did, but you did it so well that I couldn't even see it.
He couldn't even see it.
So it actually makes the trick work.
So this is very interesting for me, and it's kind of a paradox. I was in two minds about doing the show, but I decided, just do it, Michael. I was having a conversation with myself. Go on and show the British magic how beautiful magic can look and just have the balls to do it. Technical sleight of hand that the camera can burn my hands. My video's gotten over I don't know how many millions of views. Do you realize it's 10 years since I last did it? 10 years. 2019, 2009. So the fact that I didn't fool them is no longer an issue. What's important to me is I created a performance that was timeless, and it's still powerful today and relevant. And here's the funny, true story. Last week, I was in Rome with Kulik. We came out of St. Peter's Cathedral. I can't even make this up. And this Frenchman looks at me. YouTube, Magie, carte magie. He was speaking French. He said, Penn and Teller. I said, I can't believe it. What are the odds of coming out of St. Peter's Cathedral and a Frenchman who can't speak English saw me on Penn and Teller? His name was Olivier. I have his photo on my phone. We took a photograph. This tells me something. My performance touched his heart, and that's what it's about. Unforgettable memories. Yeah. And the fact that that video is now being seen by everybody. It's even on Netflix. Some good may come out of this video now, 10 years after doing it. Who knows? So here's my thing. To all the magicians listening, if you get the opportunity to go on Penn and Teller, do it. I say do it. But I'm going to say something quite radical. Don't go on and try to fool them. Go on and raise the dignity of magic through your performance. Put on the most classy, dignified and memorable performance possible, because that's what the show is about. It's not about fooling them. It's about showing the world that magic is a beautiful and worthwhile subject to pursue. And if we keep doing that, magic will continue to be popular in the eyes of the public. And I'm astonished at the level and quality that I've seen on Penn and Teller. It's fantastic. And it fills me with great pride to know I was there right at the beginning. Me, John Archer, Ben Earl, we rocked it big time. And it was wonderful, really wonderful.
Yeah, so that's your part in pop culture in the most obvious way. You were on TV.
Yes.
And how about seeing magic in pop culture in general? Mostly in movies, because that's what we do.
Okay.
Was there a movie that really spoke to you?
About magic?
About magic. Or talking about magicians or using magic as a piece of a story. We said about Prestige earlier, which is about magic, but it's a Christopher Nolan film, so it's a mystery on a mystery on a mystery. But what about movies like The Illusionist with Edward Norton, or newer ones? Maybe you've seen them. Now You See Me, Part 1 and Part 2. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well,
or maybe you've seen a movie and you would like to praise it.
Let's go back in time, shall we? I saw The Sting as a boy.
Yeah.
That was the hook. I then saw, do you remember the old TV series Starsky and Hutch?
Yes.
One of the main actors, Paul Michael Glaser, he played Houdini in a film called The Great Houdini, and he did a great job. The only films that I saw where magic was featured prominently, The Illusionist with Edward Norton. I love that film because it created a time period that must have been like Robert Houdin or Dr. Hofstadter performed in. I loved The Prestige. The Prestige was a beautiful film. It was magic from the word go. Not just the context of the story, but the way they put the whole elements together, the hierarchy of the pledge, the turn, the hook, and then the magician's prestige at the end.
Yeah.
This beautiful structure of a great magic trick, because a magician's reputation stands or falls on his ability to pull it off at the end. That's where his prestige is. So for me, it was beautiful to educate the public in this way and how serious it is, but it also shows a darker side to the nature of human beings involved in magic and how far they are prepared to go to prove themselves better than the next man. Okay, so you saw this conflict and duality. Both magicians...
Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, they were both using the same principle, but one man went further than he really needed to, whereas one man kept his secret very simple. And it's one of the greatest principles in magic. Okay, you've seen the film, so you know what I'm talking about. I used that principle in card magic. So, for me, these films showcased an era of magic where secrets were a big deal. And if you had a secret bigger or better than the next man, it just meant that you could be the top man. Now you see it, now you don't. What we have here, we have a film that has a structure very similar to The Sting, where you just don't know how it's going to turn out at the end. And the audience get educated in what it's like to be part of a big con. And then they reverse engineer so you can see what happened. Very clever, very smart. So popular culture, it just goes to show that there is something inside the craft of magic that is very appealing to people like yourself.
Yes, it is.
And you're looking for ways in which you can showcase or amplify it in a very interesting way, in a unique context that can educate, entertain, and inspire people. This, to me, is very interesting.
Don't you think that sometimes they tend to overdo it? Like, don't you think that the magic and illusion is powerful enough to show in a movie, and there's no need for all those additions? Like in The Prestige, it's all pretty much straightforward magic up until the point Tesla invents the magical machine that actually clones human beings.
Right.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's really necessary? Because sometimes I feel like maybe if they were to make a decent down-to-earth movie about just the art of illusion, that could be enough. And what you said, The Illusionist, was pretty close to that idea, I think.
I think so. There was nothing flashy about it. It was very understated. Edward Norton played it very, very well. You see his laboratory, all the things he invented, the orange tree, the beautiful machinery at work in the background. You said something very interesting. I think the technology of magic is enough. It can stand on its own. You could make a whole film about, I'm going to make this up, an individual who reads a magic book and masters everything in it and then uses it in such a way that creates an interesting narrative for the film. Let's look at the ingenuity of human skill for a moment. The ability to take a deck of cards and create magic, or to control the outcome of fate, to stack the deck, deal a royal flush. This to me is magical. To take a deck that's been shuffled and to bring order to the chaos, and to use that skill in an interesting way. What it shows is an individual dedicated to mastery of a given subject, and he's also dedicated to understanding how it plays out in the game of life. Because let's face it, life is random.
Oh, yes.
Things happen. But as human beings, you could walk out that front door and a brick falls on your head. Who's to blame? No one. You might live, but then you might be compromised physically. Why did that happen? No reason why. Now, what are you going to do in spite of it? This to me is interesting. Look at René Levin. He lost his hand as a 9-year-old boy. He was already practicing two-handed. He had to relearn everything, and it shaped his entire identity towards life. I was a shy boy, but I met all my heroes. I was like going into the school of Jedi Knights, learning magic, and each classroom gave me a different lesson, and I absorbed all of it. Marlowe, Vernon, Slidini, Darwin Ortiz, all my heroes. Boom, met all of them. The only team I didn't meet was Caps and Marlowe.
You were shaped by all your experiences, but you made
Exactly.
them happen in
Sorry?
a way. You made them happen in a way.
I like to think so. And I like to think if Slidini, whatever he may be, the spirit, let's just say it's alive and well inside of me. Because as a first-generation student, I'm an ambassador for what he taught. So when I do my lectures, they may as well be watching Slidini. So for me, the technology is more than enough. And to put extra bells and whistles on it is to demonstrate how little faith you have in the human response to great magic. Wow. It's pure and it's visceral to do a card trick for someone and to give it meaning and context with nothing else but a conversation, a beautiful narrative.
And now time for the final question. It's becoming a sort of tradition with us. As we said at the beginning, we're mostly a pop culture podcast, so we have to ask you, who is your favorite superhero and why?
Superhero?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Just one?
You can choose 3. Let's say 3.
If you're up to it, let's do 3.
3 superheroes. Well, I grew up reading the comics, Marvel and DC. I love the X-Men. I'm going to choose someone from the X-Men.
Is it Gambit?
Is it Gambit?
Well, Gambit's cool, but we didn't see much of him.
No.
I wouldn't choose Wolverine because he's too angry. Do you know who speaks to me the most, even though she's quite sad? Mystique. She's all blue, but I think she's beautiful, seriously beautiful, and she can change into anyone. And to me, Mystique represents something that I believe very powerful about human beings. We have the ability to assume any identity we choose. If I was to spend time in your company for a week, I could mimic you. I could study your mannerisms. We could engage in conversation. I could understand your rules and your values, how you see the world. And I could literally walk the street, meet your friends, and be you for a day. Mystique, for me, is a fabulous superhero. She changes into someone and adopts everything.
Yeah.
So when I look at Mystique, I see an extraordinary mutation which we already have. But here's the thing. Who we have become today, we created. Why? Because life showed us that who we needed to be doesn't work. But that was a mistake. Somewhere along the way, when we were kids, we were free, we were expressive, authentic, and then something happened that screwed up our minds. And we created an identity that is not who we are. And the identity we created was to survive. When I look at Mystique, she changes her appearance to fit in with the status quo so that she can navigate, move and groove to do whatever she needs to do. But who is she? She's the most gorgeous blue creature I've ever seen, who is afraid to walk around and just be her natural self. Raven, whatever her name is.
Yeah.
Now, Raven to me represents the possibility of being free and authentic no matter how the world sees me. I can't help the fact that I'm brown skinned. I'm finding my own voice now, and my voice is rooted in the courage to speak the truth and to be the truth as God intended. So I choose Raven because she reminds me, be who you are without any apology.
Yeah, that is deep.
That's a complete answer, I think. And
very good answer.
I'm actually beginning to think that we should now stop recording and start a new episode talking just about the comic books.
Just about
the comic books, because it seems to be a lot there.
Yeah, another way to connect with someone, to find another passion.
Don't get me started on Batman, please, because I love Batman.
Who doesn't?
Because it was a toss-up between Batman and Raven, because let me just put this on the table for a minute. Are we recording?
Yeah, still.
Bruce Wayne, young boy. He lives to see his parents murdered before his eyes. In that moment, he dies. The boy was no longer alive. Who he was in that moment, I can't even begin to tell you, because he has to make sense of a violent world. That was his first exposure of violence. The very thing he loves, taken away. And as he grows up, he has to make sense of the violent world until he discovers the bat in the living room. What the hell's that? And then he finds the cave. And he realized he was afraid of the bats. Then he goes off on his sojourn to try and understand the minds of criminals. He wants to understand the motivation of criminals, because in order to heal himself, in fact, in the Nolan films, he never really heals himself. He realizes he can't play that game anymore. I thought those films were magnificent, magical. I preferred Nolan to Tim Burton. But in fact, I love all of it. But the Nolan films really got into the psyche of the boy that becomes the Batman. And he creates himself, just like Mystique does. This ego, this alter ego, who's highly trained, skillful in forensic, physical, until he meets Bane and realizes he's no match. No way, not even psychologically. So to me, this is an interesting look at a man who created himself, but didn't really fully appreciate his limits until it was too late.
Yeah.
And he got out alive just in time. interesting concept.
And it's not just a book with pictures, right? It's a true story about someone who could have lived anywhere, at any time.
Yeah. I don't look at Superman because he's an alien from another planet who took advantage of our atmosphere where his cells became drunk.
Yeah.
And he can do things we can't. That's not fair. Let's look at someone that's on the same landing as we are, but has the mindset to alter themselves. Peter Parker gets bitten by a spider, but he's a kid. Now, I'm looking at really polar opposites. Batman, Raven, and the thought process that makes them become who they are, not realizing that the authentic person is fighting to be free.
That's a thing that most people, I think, don't look at when reading comics. Because it's, he's got muscles, he's got power, he's going to defeat the bad guys, and that's it. But when you get deeper and you try to find the meaning, it goes like the thing you just said.
Who's your favorite superhero?
We both have the same. It's Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, but it's pretty. I think it's because when we started reading comics, we were a bit younger than Peter Parker was in school. So we were looking up to the guy we could be in 2-3 years' time. So I think that's the connection between teenagers. He is a teenager with power.
Exactly.
But when he's not using his power, he's just a regular guy.
That was the most lovely thing. He still had the same problems that we were facing.
He wants to kiss a girl, but he's too shy.
But
he's still Spider-Man.
But he's fighting super villains, but at the same time, he can't speak to a girl because he's too shy. And that
resonated with us.
Oh, sure. Sure, I get that. And, I love Spider-Man as a boy. My God, I kicked myself for giving away my comics because I had them. But the X-Men was something else for me because, let's be straight. What's our mutation? Who are we becoming in life? How do we show up in the world? When we're angry, what's our mutation? In the space of that anger, Wolverine didn't discover his claws until he was in such pain as a boy. The bone claws. And we saw in the film, Raven didn't meet Charles until they were kids. But Charles knew, you're not my mother. Who are you? And they became friends. It's beautiful. And at the same time, it's tragic because society won't accept anything that's not the same. I say, to hell with that. Be who you are. Change the world.
That's a great punchline.
And that's a great way to
interpret all this conversation, to make superheroes sound even more important. In the context of all the things you've said. We thank you very much. That was a great meeting and a great experience.
Oh, that was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Koniec.